This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 2012's Chronicle, directed by Josh Trank. And Josh Trank is an interesting director for me because he directed 2015's Fantastic Four, a movie I haven't seen, so I've read a lot of press about Fantastic Four, and the consensus is that it's a terrible movie. Now, I try not to judge things by what other people say, because other people's views aren't my own, and I can't necessarily speak for their accuracy or even veracity. Though at the same time, everyone said that Fantastic Four was a terrible movie. Well, virtually everyone. There were a few outliers, but on the whole, everyone despised it. So, I did not see that movie. The Fantastic Four were never my favorite superheroes. But that being said, they are approached typically in a different manner than Trank did. So I also wasn't terribly interested in seeing that interpretation. And also, there's the fact that Fox mismanages every Marvel property they control. Well, Fox has been purchased by Disney, so that's kind of moot at this point. But at the time, it wasn't the case. And they seem to mismanage every property that they had. And you may say, well, the X-Men movies were great. No, they were not. The X-Men movies were tolerable. As time went on, they got progressively worse and very Wolverine-centered, which is fine in a sense. Hugh Jackman is a very good actor. But under Bryan Singer's direction, they made a habit of neglecting everyone else except Wolverine, which, once again, as someone who's grown up on these characters, really bugged me. But we're not talking about Fantastic Four today. I will see it at some point. I'm not looking forward to it, but it will probably happen. What we are talking today about is Chronicle. And this movie is interesting to me. It's not a bad movie, but it's a certain nihilism about it, which is really kind of irritating to me. And it's written in such a fashion where you can tell that Trank and Landis wanted to have events reach a particular outcome, which is the way of all movies, frankly. Though here it's so blatantly obvious they wanted certain things to happen in a certain way, and it feels very scripted as a result. It's shot in a found footage fashion, but it revolves around these three friends, played by Alex Russell, Dane DeHaan, and Michael B. Jordan. And they stumble upon what I assume to be an alien artifact of some sorts that looks straight out of 1978's Superman, and it grants them powers. They get the ability to fly, they seem to have a certain imperviousness to harm, things of that nature. Dane DeHaan's character is very much an outsider, and so his response, his reaction to these abilities is different from, let's say, Michael Jordan's character, who is conversely very popular. He's going to be class president. And since they discover these abilities together, they become friends, very close-knit friends, in fact. Here's where the movie begins to fall apart. That nihilism I mentioned earlier comes into play. Michael B. Jordan's character reaches out to DeHaan's character and introduces him to people, gets him laid, and all sorts of things. And DeHaan's character ends up killing Michael B. Jordan's character. It, narratively speaking, doesn't make any sense. This is the man, in the context of the movie, that has done more positive things for him than any other person. I'm not saying that he couldn't have been angry with him. He certainly could have been. What I'm saying is that there was no reason for him to kill him. It didn't quite mesh with the character. And it's not shown, but it seems to be strongly implied that lightning killed Michael B. Jordan's character. How? Was the power to generate lightning one of these abilities they were gifted with? If so, it wasn't mentioned in the movie. And a character makes a point of saying that there was no thunderstorm at the time. So the movie leaves you with the assumption that somehow Dane DeHaan's character caused Michael Jordan's character to be struck by lightning. How makes no sense, but it goes to the point I was making earlier. The movie wants to reach a certain conclusion, and it's not afraid to get rid of characters to do it. And speaking of Michael B. Jordan's character, who's named Steve Montgomery, he is very underused in this movie. It's kind of odd, in fact, how underused he is in this movie. DeHaan, I would argue, is the center. He's the heart of the movie. But considering the relationship between his character and Michael B. Jordan's, I'd expect him to be used a heck of a lot more than he is. So that's a little odd. And again, the tone is not great. This is shot in the manner of a found footage movie and runs into the problems that found footage movies tend to have. Namely, people seem to have cameras pointed at the action in the most inopportune moments. I want to say the last 20 to 30 minutes of this movie has Alex Russell's character. He's met this girl who likes him, and she accompanies him to see what's happening towards the end of the movie. And she has a camera. Why does she have a camera? It's a problem found footage movies often have. And for most of the running time, Chronicle managed to avoid this issue because Dane DeHaan's character, being very odd and an outsider, always seems to carry a camera with him. And so that kind of fit that weird outsider vibe. It was okay for him to do it because no one's going to really question it. They don't think very much of him already, so they're hardly going to look askance if he's walking around with a camera. Well, actually some people do. But in her case, there was very little reason for her to carry a camera around and film what was happening. As I said, it's not an unusual problem for found footage type movies to have, but it's just irritating just the same. At some point, either they need to get more clever with their execution or just abandon that concept. Don't use it in situations where there should not be a camera unless you're really smart and you can somehow figure out how to make it work. Though I mentioned earlier the tone of Chronicle, and I described it as nihilistic, which is fascinating because it seems to me that Fox, 20th Century Fox at the time, hired him knowing full well that that's the type of movie that he would make. After all, keep in mind, he had no other feature films that he directed prior to Chronicle. Chronicle is what he knows, and based on descriptions at any rate, because as I said, I haven't seen it. Fantastic Four, the 2015 movie, sounds very Chronicle-ish in terms of the way characters are treated, and there's an underlying darkness to things. Based upon Chronicle, it seems that they should have expected that. And if you expected that, you intervene early. By way of illustration, people have seen the types of movies that Zack Snyder makes. Why are you expecting him to do something that's seemingly way outside his area of expertise? Or he doesn't care to do it. The difference is negligible. So why do they expect Trank to make a movie based on what they hired him for being nothing like what they expected? Chronicle is not a bad movie. It's certainly watchable. It has this tendency, though, to... Oh, I should mention, Chronicle has a lot of wire work. I mentioned earlier that all three of them can fly. So you have people suspended on wires, green screen, in other words. And it is not very good looking, in the sense that it doesn't look like they're flying. If you've seen Eternals, by the way, and the way Icarus flies, that is what these people should have looked like. Instead, it just looks like people hanging from wires. You can't see the wires, but you know they're there because people can't fly. And they look really awkward. Now, I can see that initially, but as the movie moves on, it just doesn't go away, and it doesn't work. Though Chronicle's not a bad movie, though Chronicle is also not a surprise. And that Fantastic Four, made 3 years after Chronicle, and would have likely have resembled it tonally if he were allowed to finish his movie, shouldn't have been a shock to anyone, especially people who supposedly know these things. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.